The shuttle bay of Nexus Prime Academy hummed with the usual morning activity. Students from dozens of species hurried between classes, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones. The Academy floated in the neutral space between three major galactic civilizations, serving as the premier educational institution for the brightest minds across known space. Commander Zeftar, a towering Velkari with crystalline skin that reflected the station's artificial sunlight, stood at the observation deck, reviewing the day's arrivals. His 4 eyes scanned the manifest on his datapad, noting the expected students and dignitaries. Everything seemed routine until a small, unmarked transport ship docked at Bay 7. "Sir," called his aide, a nervous Thrixian whose tentacles twitched with anxiety. "We have an unscheduled arrival. No identification codes, no prior registration." Zeftar's crystalline face darkened. Security at Nexus Prime was absolute. Nothing arrived without proper clearance, especially not during orientation week when tensions between species ran high. He watched through the transparasteel as the transport's airlock hissed open. A figure emerged that made him pause. It was clearly a human female. Though he had seen few of her species in person, humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 decades ago. Most other species still considered them primitive, barely worth acknowledgement. Yet here one stood in the Academy's docking bay, carrying nothing but a small travel bag. She was unremarkable by human standards, average height, brown hair tied back simply, wearing clothes that looked handmade rather than fabricated. But something in the way she moved caught his attention. There was a confidence there, a purposefulness that seemed at odds with her species' reputation. "Should I alert security, sir?" the aide asked. Zeftar considered this. Protocol demanded he detain any unauthorized arrivals, but curiosity won out. "No. Monitor her movements. I want to see what she does." The human woman, she appeared young. Though Zeftar knew human aging was difficult to judge, walked calmly through the docking bay. Other students gave her a wide berth. Humans were known to be unpredictable, sometimes violent. Their brief history in galactic politics was filled with conflicts and misunderstandings. She approached the information kiosk where a holographic Andromedian clerk materialized. The clerk's translator immediately began processing her words. "I'm looking for the registrar's office," she said simply. Her voice carried easily through the bay, calm and clear. The hologram flickered with confusion. "I'm sorry, but the registration period ended 3 months ago. All positions for this cycle have been filled. Perhaps you're looking for the visitor center?" "No," she replied, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'm here to attend classes. My name is Sarah Chen." The hologram's confusion deepened. It ran quick scans through the student database, then the faculty listings, then the approved visitor logs. Nothing. No record of any Sarah Chen anywhere in the system. "I'm afraid there must be some mistake," the clerk said diplomatically. "Without proper documentation and pre-approval, I cannot direct you to the registrar. You'll need to—" "Actually," Sarah interrupted gently, "I think you'll find my paperwork is in order." She reached into her travel bag and withdrew a small device. When she activated it, the kiosk's systems suddenly chimed with recognition. New data flooded the displays. Enrollment records appeared as if they had always been there, complete with academic transcripts, recommendation letters, and financial clearances. Zeftar's 4 eyes widened. That was impossible. The Academy's computer systems were among the most secure in the galaxy, protected by Valorian encryption that would take centuries to crack. Yet this human had somehow inserted herself into their records so seamlessly that the system now insisted she had been enrolled all along. "Ah, yes, Miss Chen," the hologram said, now completely convinced. "Welcome to Nexus Prime Academy. You're assigned to Advanced Theoretical Physics, Section 7. Your dormitory assignment is in the Zeta Wing. Shall I arrange transportation?" "I can find my way," Sarah said. "Thank you." As she walked away, her bag slung casually over her shoulder, Zeftar made a decision. He activated his personal communicator and contacted the Academy's director. "Director Valthesh, we have an interesting situation developing." The response came immediately in the director's characteristic measured tones. Director Valthesh was a Nexari, one of the most ancient and wise species in the galaxy. Her people had been exploring space when most others were still planet-bound. "Explain, Commander." A human has arrived without clearance and somehow inserted herself into our systems. Her records show she's enrolled in advanced theoretical physics. There was a long pause. Impossible. Our security is. I watched it happen, Director. The student's name is Sarah Chen. She bypassed Valorian encryption, like it was a simple lock. Another pause. Longer this time. Have her monitored, but do not interfere. If a human has technology capable of penetrating our systems, we need to understand how. Alert Professor Kethrel in theoretical physics. Tell him to observe this student carefully, but to treat her as any other pupil. Understood, Director. Zeftar cut the connection and watched Sarah Chen disappear into the crowd of students. He had served at Nexus Prime for 12 years and had never seen anything quite like this. Humans were supposed to be the galaxy's newcomers, technologically backward and politically naive, yet this one had just accomplished something that should have required years of planning and resources that no human government possessed. Meanwhile, Sarah made her way through the Academy's corridors with apparent ease. The station was vast, housing over 50,000 students and faculty, but she never hesitated at intersections or consulted any maps. She moved like someone who had walked these halls before, though the Academy's logs insisted this was her first visit. The dormitory assignment led her to a small but comfortable room in the Zeta wing. Her roommate was already there, a Kilarian named Vexhi, whose scales shifted colors based on emotion. Currently, they displayed a deep purple indicating surprise and concern. You're human, Vexhi said, her voice carrying the melodic quality typical of her species. I am, Sarah confirmed, setting her bag on the unoccupied bed. I'm Sarah. The Kilarian's scales flickered to orange confusion. How do you know my name? And how do you speak Kilarian standard without a translator? Sarah paused in unpacking her few belongings. It was a good question. She had been speaking each being's native language instinctively, without thinking about it. Most species required universal translators to communicate effectively. I pick up languages quickly, she said, switching to Galactic Common to put her roommate more at ease. Vexhi's scales remained orange. No one picks up languages that quickly. Kilarian standard takes years to master even with neural implants. You spoke it like a native. Sarah offered a warm smile. I've always been good with patterns. Languages are just patterns, aren't they? Before Vexhi could respond, a chime indicated their first class was beginning. Advanced theoretical physics was held in the Academy's largest lecture hall, a vast amphitheater that could accommodate students of wildly different sizes and atmospheric needs. The professor, a massive Kethrel, whose rocky hide marked him as one of the silicon-based Gornathi, stood behind a podium that seemed tiny in comparison to his bulk. Today we begin our exploration of trans-dimensional mathematics, Professor Kethrel announced. His voice resonated through the hall like grinding stone. Can anyone tell me why conventional physics breaks down at the quantum dimensional interface? Several tentacles, claws, and appendages shot up around the room. The professor's multifaceted eyes scanned the eager faces and stopped when they found Sarah Chen sitting quietly in the middle section. She hadn't raised her hand, but there was something in her posture that suggested she knew the answer. The human student, he said, his rocky features shifting into what might have been curiosity. Miss Chen, isn't it? Sarah nodded. Yes, Professor. Do you have thoughts on the question? Conventional physics assumes linear time progression and stable dimensional barriers, Sarah said clearly. But at the quantum level, causality becomes probabilistic rather than deterministic. When you introduce trans-dimensional variables, you're essentially asking mathematics designed for three-dimensional space to describe infinite-dimensional possibilities. The hall fell silent. Even Professor Kethrel seemed stunned. That was a graduate-level answer, demonstrating understanding that typically took years to develop. Around the room, students from species renowned for their intellect stared at the quiet human girl who had just explained concepts they were still struggling to grasp. That is, correct, the professor said slowly. Though I'm curious how you came to that understanding. Humans have only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Trans-dimensional theory is somewhat beyond your species' current scientific paradigm. Sarah felt hundreds of eyes upon her. Students, teaching assistants, even monitoring systems were all focused on her response. She had already revealed more than she intended, but backing down now would raise even more questions. I've done some reading, she said simply. Reading where? Pressed the professor. These concepts aren't published in human scientific journals. They require clearance levels your species doesn't possess. The weight of attention in the room was becoming uncomfortable. Sarah could sense the curiosity, the suspicion, the growing awareness that something wasn't quite right about her presence here. She needed to deflect without lying outright. Sometimes understanding comes from seeing patterns rather than studying theories, she said. The math is beautiful once you recognize the underlying structure. Professor Kethral's rocky features shifted again. As one of the galaxy's foremost experts in theoretical physics, he could recognize genuine understanding when he heard it. This human wasn't reciting memorized information, she was speaking from deep comprehension of principles that should be impossible for her species to grasp. We'll continue this discussion after class, he said finally, though his tone suggested it wasn't entirely a request. The lecture proceeded, covering fundamental concepts that formed the building blocks for more advanced study. Sarah listened attentively but didn't volunteer any more answers. She could feel the attention of her classmates, the weight of their confusion and growing suspicion. Humans weren't supposed to be here, weren't supposed to understand these concepts, weren't supposed to navigate galactic technology with such ease. As the class concluded, students began filing out in small groups, their conversations filled with speculation about the mysterious human. Sarah gathered her things slowly, hoping the crowd would thin before she had to face Professor Kethral's questions. "Miss Chen," the professor called, as the last students departed. "A moment, please." Sarah approached the podium where the massive Gornathi waited. Up close, his rocky hide showed the intricate crystalline patterns that indicated advanced age and wisdom among his people. "Where did you really learn transdimensional theory?" he asked directly. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Does it matter? I'm here to learn, just like any other student. But you're not like any other student, are you?" The professor's voice carried a note of gentle challenge. "In 30 years of teaching, I've never encountered someone who grasped these concepts so intuitively. Your understanding suggests either formal training from sources that shouldn't exist, or what? Or you're not what you appear to be." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. Professor Kethral was perceptive, perhaps too perceptive. She needed to be more careful, to blend in better, but she had come too far to turn back now. "I'm exactly what I appear to be," she said calmly. "A student seeking knowledge." The professor studied her for a long moment. "Very well, but understand that curiosity is the nature of academics. Your presence here will not go unnoticed or unquestioned. I suggest you prepare for scrutiny." As Sarah left the lecture hall, she felt the weight of eyes following her. Word would spread quickly through the academy's social networks. The mysterious human who spoke alien languages and understood impossible theories would become a topic of intense interest. Back in her dormitory room, Vexhai was waiting with unconcealed curiosity. Her scales had shifted to bright yellow excitement mixed with anxiety. "The whole academy is talking about you," she said as Sarah entered. "They're saying you made Professor Kethral question his own theories." "I just answered a question," Sarah replied, settling onto her bed, "in ways that aren't supposed to be possible." Vexhai's scales flickered through several colors as she processed her thoughts. "Sarah, I've been studying here for 2 years. I've seen students from every major species, including some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy. No one, absolutely no one, demonstrates that level of understanding in their first class." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her options. She could deflect again, make excuses, try to minimize what had happened, or she could begin to trust someone with small pieces of the truth. "What if I told you that understanding sometimes comes from unexpected places?" she said carefully. "I'd say you're being deliberately vague." Vexhai's scales shifted to a patient blue. "Look, I'm not trying to interrogate you, but you're my roommate, and there are already rumors spreading. Some students think you're a spy. Others believe you're some kind of enhanced human experiment. The Velkari delegation is convinced your government has secret technology they're not sharing." Sarah sighed. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. Drawing attention, creating suspicion, becoming the center of political speculation. But she had underestimated how closely her every action would be scrutinized in this environment. "I'm not a spy," she said truthfully. "And I'm not an experiment. I'm just someone trying to learn. But you're not just anyone, are you?" Vexhai's scales had shifted to a gentle green compassion mixed with curiosity. "Whatever you are, whoever you really are, you don't have to hide it from me. I'm from a minor system on the galactic rim. I understand what it's like to not fit in with the major powers. Sarah looked at her roommate, sensing genuine friendship being offered. It had been a long time since anyone had extended trust without agenda or expectation. The temptation to confide was strong, but the risks were too great. Maybe someday, I'll be able to explain, she said. For now, I just need to be a student. Vexy nodded, though her scales showed she wasn't entirely satisfied with the answer. All right. But Sarah, whatever secrets you're carrying, they're going to come out eventually. This place is too small and too curious for anyone to stay hidden for long. As night cycle approached and the Academy's artificial lights dimmed to simulate planetary rhythms, Sarah lay on her narrow bed thinking about the day's events. She had managed to enroll, attend her first class, and establish herself as a student, but she had also revealed more than intended and attracted exactly the kind of attention she needed to avoid. Through the room's small porthole, she could see stars wheeling slowly as the station maintained its orbital position. Somewhere among those points of light was Earth, humanity's small blue homeworld where she had been born 22 years ago, though that simple fact was perhaps the most dangerous secret of all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new opportunities to either blend in or stand out. She needed to be smarter, more careful, more conscious of the vast gaps between what humans were supposed to know and what she actually understood. But tonight, for just a moment, she allowed herself to feel a small satisfaction. She was here, at the galaxy's premier academy, surrounded by the brightest minds from dozens of species. Phase 1 of her mission was complete. Now the real work could begin. The Academy's morning chimes echoed through the corridors as Sarah made her way to her second day of classes. Word of the mysterious human had indeed spread overnight. Conversations stopped as she passed, and she could feel curious eyes tracking her movement through the halls. Some students whispered in languages they assumed she couldn't understand, speculating about her origins and abilities. She understood every word. Her first class was xenobiology, taught by Dr. Mylithera, a graceful Tetheran, whose bioluminescent markings pulsed in rhythm with her thoughts. The classroom was filled with students from various species, each bringing their own perspective to the study of alien life forms. Today we'll examine the metabolic impossibilities of silicon-based life, Dr. Mylithera announced, her markings shifting to a focused blue pattern. Can anyone explain why carbon-based biology was long considered the only viable foundation for complex life? Several students responded, but Sarah noticed their answers were incomplete, missing crucial elements that seemed obvious to her. When the discussion stalled, she quietly raised her hand. Miss Chen, the professor acknowledged, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to curious yellow. Your thoughts? The assumption was based on carbon's unique bonding capabilities, Sarah began. Carbon can form 4 stable bonds, creating complex molecular chains necessary for protein synthesis. Silicon, while similar, forms weaker bonds that break down at temperatures where carbon-based life thrives. However, this analysis ignored the possibility of alternative biochemistry in different environmental conditions. Dr. Mylithera's patterns brightened. Continue. Silicon-based life could thrive in high-pressure, low-temperature environments where carbon chains would be too fragile. But more importantly, the question assumes life must follow patterns we recognize. What if silicon-based organisms developed entirely different metabolic pathways that don't rely on protein chains at all? The room fell silent again. Sarah's explanation demonstrated not just theoretical knowledge, but the kind of intuitive understanding that suggested direct experience with diverse life forms. Among the students, whispers resumed with increased intensity. Fascinating perspective, Dr. Mylithera said, her patterns now cycling through several colors rapidly, a sign of intense thought. Your insights suggest familiarity with xenobiological research that isn't typically available to undergraduate students. May I ask what sparked your interest in alternative biochemistry? Sarah felt the familiar weight of attention settling on her again. She needed to be more careful, but deflecting every question would only increase suspicion. I find it interesting how often we assume our way is the only way, she said diplomatically. Life has a tendency to surprise us. After class, Sarah noticed she was being followed. A small group of students maintained distance behind her as she walked toward her next destination. She recognized them from various species, a Velkari with crystalline features, 2 humanoid Zephyrians, and a massive Gornathi, who moved with surprising stealth despite his rocky bulk. They were trying to be subtle, But Sarah's awareness extended far beyond normal human senses. She could hear their whispered conversations, sense their elevated heart rates or equivalent biological indicators, and track their movements through peripheral vision that encompassed nearly a full circle around her position. She led them on a winding route through the academy's corridors, pretending to consult maps while actually testing their tracking abilities. When she ducked into an empty study room, they gathered outside the entrance, clearly debating whether to approach directly. Sarah waited. Sometimes the best strategy was to let others make the first move. The door chimed as the group entered. The Velkari stepped forward as their apparent spokesman, his crystalline skin reflecting the room's soft lighting. "Miss Chen," he said formally. "I am HFY, representing a coalition of concerned students. We would like to speak with you." "About what?" Sarah asked, though she already knew. "About who you really are." Sarah gestured to the empty chairs around the study table. "Please, sit. Though I'm not sure what you think, I can tell you that I haven't already said." The students exchanged glances before settling into seats clearly designed for various anatomical requirements. HFY continued as their spokesperson. "Miss Chen, we've all been studying at this academy for at least 2 years. We represent some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, yet in 2 days, you've demonstrated knowledge and capabilities that exceed anything we've encountered." One of the Zephyrians, whose silver skin marked her as nobility from the inner systems, leaned forward. "Your understanding of transdimensional physics suggests access to classified research. Your insights into xenobiology indicate direct contact with species not yet part of the galactic community, and your ability to navigate our computer systems implies technology that shouldn't exist." The Gornathi spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone. "We're not accusing you of anything illegal. But your presence here raises questions that affect galactic security. If humans have capabilities they haven't disclosed, it changes the political balance." Sarah studied each of them carefully. They were genuinely concerned, not hostile or aggressive. These were some of the galaxy's brightest minds trying to understand something that didn't fit their worldview. "What if I told you that humans aren't quite what they appear to be?" she said carefully. HFY's crystalline features sharpened. "Explain. What if the species you've been introduced to as humanity represents only a small portion of who we really are? What if first contact was deliberately limited to ease the transition into galactic society?" The students exchanged meaningful looks. The possibility had clearly occurred to them. "Are you saying humans have been hiding their true capabilities?" the silver-skinned Zephyrian asked. Sarah considered her words carefully. "I'm saying that any species capable of achieving faster-than-light travel in just a few decades probably didn't start from stone tools and wooden wheels." The Gornathi's rocky features shifted into what might have been understanding. "Hidden development. Secret colonies. Advanced research conducted away from the homeworld. That would explain the inconsistencies," HFY agreed. "But it raises new questions. Why the deception? What are humans really capable of? And what does your presence here mean for the rest of the galaxy?" Before Sarah could respond, her personal communicator chimed with an urgent message. The display showed a priority alert from Director Valthesh, requesting her immediate presence in the administrative center. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, rising from her chair. "I'm being summoned by the director. We'll have to continue this conversation later." As she left the study room, she could hear the students resuming their discussion in hushed, urgent tones. Word would spread even faster now. By evening, half the academy would be speculating about hidden human capabilities and secret agendas. The administrative center occupied the academy's central core, a massive cylindrical structure that housed the primary computer systems and senior faculty offices. Director Valthesh's office was at the very top, its walls lined with artifacts from civilizations across the galaxy. Director Valthesh herself was ancient even by Nixari standards, her translucent blue skin showing the intricate neural patterns that marked advanced age and wisdom. She gestured for Sarah to sit in a chair that adjusted automatically to human dimensions. "Miss Chen," she began, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested deep thought. "You've created quite a stir in your brief time here." "I've tried to keep a low profile," Sarah replied truthfully. "Indeed. Yet your very presence seems to challenge assumptions about human capabilities. Tell me, how does one of your species gain access to Valorian encryption codes?" Sarah felt a chill. The director wasn't asking about her academic knowledge anymore, she was asking about the security breach that had allowed her enrollment. I'm not sure what you mean. Director Valthesh activated a holographic display showing security logs from Sarah's arrival. Our systems show that your enrollment records were created using authentic Valorian encryption, but from a source that doesn't exist in our databases. This suggests either a catastrophic security failure or technology that we don't understand. Perhaps there was a glitch in your systems. Perhaps, the director agreed, though her tone suggested skepticism. Or perhaps Miss Chen isn't entirely human. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack under the director's piercing gaze. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that nothing about your presence here follows known patterns. Your academic knowledge exceeds anything in human educational systems. Your technological capabilities surpass your species' known development. Your linguistic skills indicate exposure to languages that humans shouldn't know exist. Director Valthesh rose from her chair and moved to the window overlooking the Academy's central plaza. In my 800 years of life, I've encountered many species during their transition into galactic society. There are always growing pains, misunderstandings, technological gaps that create friction. But I've never encountered anything like this. Like what? A species that appears to be deliberately concealing its true nature. Sarah remained silent, knowing that anything she said now would be analyzed for hidden meanings and implications. Let me share something with you, Miss Chen, the director continued. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures from the direction of human space, patterns that don't match any known technology in our databases. Sarah felt her heart rate increase, though she kept her expression neutral. 2 weeks ago, a merchant vessel reported encountering a human ship that shouldn't have existed. The design was unlike anything in your public fleet records, and its capabilities far exceeded known human technology. The director turned back to face Sarah directly. Yesterday, you arrived at my academy with credentials that required technology we didn't know humans possessed. Today, you're demonstrating knowledge that suggests access to research databases your species shouldn't know exist. What's your point? Director, my point is that either humanity has been systematically deceiving the galactic community about its capabilities, or you're not entirely human. Either possibility has profound implications for galactic politics and security. Sarah weighed her options. She could continue deflecting, maintain her cover, and hope to complete her mission without further exposure. But Director Valthesh was too perceptive, and the evidence was mounting too quickly. What if both possibilities are partially true? She said finally. The director's neural patterns brightened with interest. Elaborate. What if humanity is exactly what it appears to be? A young species taking its first steps into the galactic community. But what if that's not the entire story? Continue. Sarah took a breath, knowing she was about to cross a line she couldn't uncross. What if some humans had been part of the galactic community much longer than official records suggest? What if first contact wasn't humanity's introduction to alien life, but rather the moment when hidden human populations decided to reveal their existence? Director Valthesh's ancient features showed genuine surprise for the first time. You're suggesting a shadow population of humans who've been secretly part of galactic civilization? I'm suggesting that space is very large, Director, and that first contact protocols might not account for every possible scenario, including the possibility that some humans were already here. Sarah nodded. Among other possibilities, the director moved to her desk and activated a secure communication system. This conversation is now classified at the highest levels. What I'm about to show you cannot leave this room. A holographic display materialized showing star charts with unusual annotations. Red markers indicated locations throughout known space, some in supposedly empty systems, others near major civilizations. These are energy signatures we've been tracking for the past 5 years, the director explained. They don't match any known technology, but they follow patterns consistent with advanced human neural architecture. Sarah studied the display carefully. The markers formed a rough network throughout the galaxy, concentrated in areas where they could monitor major civilizations without detection. We've suspected for some time that humanity's official introduction to galactic society was carefully orchestrated, the director continued. But we couldn't determine who was orchestrating it, or why. And now? Now I'm sitting across from someone who shouldn't exist according to official records, demonstrating capabilities that officially don't exist, using technology that officially isn't possible. I think it's time for some honest answers. Sarah looked at the holographic display, at the network of hidden positions that represented just a small fraction of the truth. She thought about her mission, about the careful plans that had brought her here, about the delicate balance between revelation and concealment. "Director," she said slowly, "how much do you really want to know?" "Everything," came the immediate reply. "Even if it changes your understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy? Even if it challenges assumptions that galactic politics are built on?" Director Valthesh's neural patterns shifted to deep blue, the color of absolute determination. "Especially then," Sarah nodded, making her decision. "Then I think it's time you met some people. But not here, and not through normal channels." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that you accompany me to a place that doesn't officially exist, to meet people who officially don't exist, to learn about capabilities that are officially impossible." The director studied her for a long moment. "You're talking about leaving the academy, abandoning your cover. I'm talking about trust, Director. You've shown me yours by revealing classified intelligence. Now I'm offering to show you mine. The risks of not knowing are greater," Sarah interrupted. "You've detected energy signatures and unusual technology. Others have too. Eventually, someone is going to investigate more aggressively than you have. When that happens, the carefully managed revelation process we've been following will collapse." Director Valthesh moved to her window again, looking out at the thousands of students from dozens of species who saw the academy as a symbol of peaceful cooperation between civilizations. "If I agree to this, if I leave with you, it will be noticed. Questions will be asked. Then we'd better have good answers ready when you return. And if I don't return?" Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Then humanity will have lost one of its best chances at a peaceful transition to full galactic participation." The weight of the decision settled between them. Director Valthesh had spent centuries building bridges between species, fostering understanding and cooperation. Now she was being asked to step into unknown territory with someone whose true nature remained a mystery. "When?" she asked finally. "Tonight. There's a transport that will dock at Bay 7 at midnight. It won't appear on your sensors, and it won't stay long. The same bay where you arrived." "Yes. And after? What happens to your mission here?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "My mission here was never about attending classes, Director. It was about finding someone trustworthy enough to serve as a bridge between humanity and the galactic community. Someone with the wisdom to handle revelations that could reshape galactic politics. And you've decided I'm that person? You've decided that, Director. By choosing to seek truth despite the risks." As evening cycle approached and the academy prepared for another night, Sarah returned to her dormitory to find Vexy waiting with obvious concern. Her scales displayed a swirling pattern of anxiety and curiosity. "The whole academy is talking about you being summoned by the director," she said immediately. "Some think you're in trouble. Others think you're being recruited for something classified. Both, in a way," Sarah replied, beginning to pack her few belongings. "You're leaving?" Vexy's scales shifted to distressed orange. "Yes, but not permanently, and not alone." Sarah turned to face her roommate directly. "Vex, hi. I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise not to share it until I return. Of course, I'm not just a human student seeking education. I'm part of something much larger, much older than official human history suggests. And tonight, I'm going to show Director Valthesh the truth about who we really are." Vex High's scales cycled through several colors before settling on deep purple, the color of profound shock. "Sarah, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that humanity's story is just beginning. And if things go well tonight, the galaxy is about to discover that we're much more interesting neighbors than anyone suspected." As midnight approached, Sarah stood in docking bay 7 watching for a transport that wouldn't appear on sensors. Director Valthesh waited beside her, having made the difficult decision to trust someone whose true nature remained a mystery. The bay was empty, silent, showing no signs of any approaching vessel. Then, without warning, space simply folded, and a ship was there, sleek, elegant, and utterly unlike any human design in the official databases. "Impossible," Director Valthesh whispered. "That's spatial folding technology. No one has achieved that level of manipulation." "No one officially," Sarah corrected. "But humans have always been good at thinking outside conventional parameters." The ship's airlock opened, and a figure emerged that made the director's ancient features show new surprise. It was clearly human, but wearing technology that seemed to merge seamlessly with organic tissue, advanced beyond anything in known galactic civilization. "Director," the figure called out, speaking perfect Nixari despite the lack of any visible translator. "Welcome. We've been looking forward to this meeting for quite some time." As they boarded the impossible ship, Director Valthesh realized that everything she thought she knew about humanity was about to change. The quiet species that had stumbled into galactic civilization 30 years ago was apparently much older, much more advanced, and much more mysterious than anyone had suspected. The real question was no longer who Sarah Chen was, but who humanity really was, and what their true arrival in galactic politics would mean for everyone else. The transport ship moved through space in ways that defied conventional understanding of physics. Director Valthesh watched through the vessel's transparent hull as stars seemed to bend around them, creating patterns of light that spoke of technologies far beyond anything in her 8 centuries of experience. "Spatial folding is considered impossible by our best theoretical physicists," she said to the human pilot who had introduced himself simply as Marcus. "The energy requirements alone should make it unfeasible." Marcus smiled, his expression carrying the same quiet confidence that Sarah had shown. "Impossible is a word we've learned to be careful with, Director. It often says more about limitations in understanding than limitations in reality." Sarah sat across from them, no longer trying to hide her true nature. The careful facade of the curious student had been replaced by someone who clearly possessed knowledge and authority far beyond her apparent years. "Where are you taking us?" Director Valthesh asked. "Home," Sarah replied. "The home you've never seen." The ship dropped out of its impossible movement pattern, and ahead of them lay a sight that made the director's ancient mind struggle to process what she was seeing. It wasn't a planet or space station. It was something entirely beyond her experience. A massive structure hung in space, neither artificial nor natural, but somehow both. It pulsed with life, its surfaces shifting and flowing like water, while maintaining geometric patterns that spoke of conscious design. It was easily the size of a small moon, but it moved with organic grace through the void. "What is that?" Director Valthesh whispered. "That," Sarah said proudly, "is New Geneva, one of our older settlements." "Settlement? That thing is alive." Marcus guided their transport toward what appeared to be a docking bay that formed itself as they approached. "Director, you're looking at bio-architectural technology that we developed about 6,000 years ago. The structure grows and adapts to meet the needs of its inhabitants, while maintaining perfect environmental control and spatial efficiency." 6,000 years? The director's neural patterns blazed with shock. "Humans achieved faster than light travel 30 years ago. Your species barely had spaceflight a century ago. The humans you've met achieved faster than light travel 30 years ago," Sarah corrected gently. But they weren't the only humans in the galaxy. As their transport settled into the organic docking bay, Sarah began to explain the truth that would reshape everything Director Valthesh thought she knew about human civilization. "Director, what do you know about human evolutionary history?" "Basic facts. Single-planet evolution, relatively rapid technological development, tribal conflicts that delayed space exploration until recent centuries. All true, for one branch of humanity," Sarah confirmed. "But incomplete. They disembarked into corridors that seemed to grow around them, providing perfect atmosphere and gravity without any visible technological apparatus. Other humans moved through the passages, all displaying the same quiet confidence and subtle technological integration that marked them as far advanced beyond their earthbound cousins. About 12,000 years ago," Sarah continued as they walked, "a group of humans achieved something that your scientists still consider theoretical. They learned to manipulate spacetime directly, to fold reality in ways that made faster-than-light travel not just possible, but elementary." Director Valthesh stopped walking. 12,000 years? But that predates most galactic civilizations. By about 8,000 years, yes, Marcus confirmed. "We were exploring the galaxy, while most species were still developing written language. They entered a vast chamber whose walls showed live images from across known space. Stars, planets, civilizations, all displayed with clarity that suggested real-time observation from impossible distances. This is our monitoring center," Sarah explained. "From here, we watch over the development of younger civilizations, ensuring they have the time and space needed to grow into their potential." "Watch over?" The director's tone carried a note of suspicion. You mean you've been manipulating galactic development? A new voice answered from across the chamber. Not manipulating, Director. Protecting. The speaker was clearly human but ancient in a way that went beyond physical age. Her presence carried weight that reminded Director Valthesh of the eldest members of her own species, beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. I am Elena Vasquez, the woman said, approaching with movements that seemed to bend space around her. I serve as coordinator for this sector of the galaxy, and you, Director, have been doing excellent work at Nexus Prime. You've been watching the Academy? We've been watching everything, Elena replied simply. For 12 millennia, we've been the galaxy's invisible guardians, ensuring that developing civilizations have the chance to grow without interference from hostile forces. Director Valthesh felt pieces of galactic history beginning to realign in her mind. The Void Hunters, the species that disappeared them, was us, Sarah confirmed. The Void Hunters were consuming developing civilizations, preventing any growth beyond basic spaceflight. We stopped them. The Krelthan Empire's sudden collapse 15 centuries ago, civil war triggered by carefully placed information about their leaders' corruption, Marcus said. They were preparing to enslave half the galaxy's developing species. The mysterious energy signatures we've been detecting, Elena gestured to the monitoring displays. Our observation posts and intervention assets. We maintain a presence in every major system, ready to act when necessary. Director Valthesh sank into a chair that formed itself from the organic floor. You're telling me that human civilization is 12,000 years old, possesses technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive, and has been secretly guarding galactic development for millennia? That's one way to put it, Elena said with a slight smile. But why the secrecy? Why the deception about Earth's development? Sarah moved to the display wall, highlighting images of Earth and its solar system. Because, Director, the galaxy wasn't ready for the truth. Most civilizations assume that technological advancement follows predictable patterns, that species develop at roughly similar rates. The discovery that one species had 12,000 years of head start would have shattered the political balance. So you created a false history, Director Valthesh said, understanding beginning to dawn. Made it appear that humans were newcomers. We carefully guided our Earth-bound cousins toward spaceflight capability, Elena explained. When they achieved faster-than-light travel, we allowed them to make contact with galactic civilization as representatives of humanity. It gave us a perfect cover for continued observation and intervention. Marcus activated another display showing a complex timeline. The humans you've known as the species are real, Director. They represent our genetic heritage, our origins, but they're also our mask, allowing us to work within galactic society without revealing our true capabilities. And now you're revealing this to me. Why? Sarah turned from the display to face the Director directly. Because the galaxy is entering a new phase of development. Several civilizations are approaching the technological threshold, where they'll either advance to our level or destroy themselves. The Velkari are close to spatial folding technology. The Andromedans are developing quantum consciousness transfer. The Nexari, your own people, are on the verge of temporal perception. The next 50 years will determine whether galactic civilization advances to a new level of existence or fragments into warfare that could last millennia. Elena added, we can't maintain our hidden guardianship much longer. It's time for direct cooperation. Director Valthesh absorbed this information, her ancient mind working through implications that stretched across centuries of future development. What exactly are you proposing? Elena gestured, and the chamber around them transformed into a representation of the galaxy itself, showing current political boundaries, trade routes, and zones of influence. We're proposing the establishment of the Galactic Development Council, she said, a formal body that includes both the known civilizations and humanity's true representatives, an organization dedicated to fostering advancement, while preventing the kinds of catastrophic conflicts that have destroyed civilizations in other galaxies. You've observed other galaxies? Director Valthesh couldn't hide her amazement. Director, Sarah said gently, we've been expanding beyond this galaxy for 3,000 years. We've seen what happens when technological advancement proceeds without wisdom. We've watched entire galactic civilizations collapse into warfare, consume themselves with internal conflicts, or stagnate into decline. We don't want that to happen here. Marcus activated new displays showing distant galaxies, some thriving with countless civilizations, others dark and empty, except for the remnants of ancient wars. The Andromeda Galaxy lost 70% of its inhabited worlds to a conflict over temporal manipulation technology, he explained. The Magellanic Clouds went through a dark age that lasted 2 million years, after their most advanced species tried to impose technological hegemony. We've learned from their mistakes. And you believe our galaxy is approaching similar choices? Elena nodded gravely. The technologies being developed now, spatial manipulation, quantum consciousness, temporal perception, these are the same capabilities that led to catastrophe elsewhere, but they also represent the potential for unprecedented advancement, for civilizations to grow beyond anything previously achieved. The difference, Sarah added, is guidance. Wisdom. The recognition that true advancement comes not from technological power alone, but from the maturity to use that power responsibly. Director Valthesh rose from her chair and moved to the galactic display. She could see the patterns now, the subtle influences that had guided development for millennia, the protection that had allowed civilizations to grow at their own pace without external interference. My people, the Nexari, we pride ourselves on wisdom accumulated over centuries of experience. But you're talking about wisdom accumulated over millennia of galactic observation, and that's why we need partners, Elena said. We've learned much, but we can't learn everything. Each species brings perspectives we lack, insights we can't achieve alone, the Nexari understanding of long-term consequences, the Velkari appreciation for crystalline logic, the Zephyrian capacity for adaptive thinking. All of these are essential for wise guidance of galactic development. Sarah moved to join them at the display. The academy you run, Director, is already an example of what we hope to achieve on a larger scale. Species learning from each other, sharing knowledge and perspectives, growing together rather than in isolation. But on a galactic scale, with full awareness of our capabilities and our responsibilities, Marcus added. Director Valthesh studied the representation of her galaxy, seeing it now not as a collection of separate civilizations but as a single developing entity that needed careful guidance to reach its potential. What would you need from me? She asked finally. Initially, your support in approaching other species leaders, Elena replied. Your reputation for wisdom and neutrality makes you an ideal advocate for this new approach. But eventually, we'd want you to help lead the transition period. Transition to what? Sarah smiled. And the galactic display transformed to show potential future civilizations working together across vast distances, technologies that seemed like magic, exploratory missions to distant galaxies, and achievements that made current galactic civilization look like a first tentative step into a much larger universe. To humanity's real place in the galaxy, she said. Not as hidden guardians watching from the shadows, but as partners in the next phase of galactic evolution. And if other species reject this partnership, if they see humanity as a threat rather than an ally, Elena's expression grew serious. Then we'll continue as we have, protecting from the shadows while hoping for eventual understanding. But Director, you've seen what we're capable of. If we wanted to conquer or control, we could have done so at any point in the last 12,000 years. Our goal has always been growth, development, the realization of potential. Marcus stepped forward. What we're offering is a choice, Director. Continue the current path of slow, careful development with hidden protection, or begin open cooperation toward achievements none of our species could accomplish alone. Director Valthesh looked around the chamber at these humans who commanded technologies that made them seem like beings from a much more advanced universe. But in their faces, she saw the same curiosity, the same drive for understanding, the same hope for a better future that motivated the students at her academy. How do we begin? She asked. Sarah activated a new display showing Nexus Prime Academy. We begin where it makes most sense. With education. With young minds from every species learning not just about each other, but about the real scope of what's possible when civilizations work together. You want to expand the Academy's curriculum? We want to make it the first true institution of galactic higher learning, Elena said. A place where students can access knowledge that currently exists only in our archives, where they can prepare for responsibilities that span entire sectors of the galaxy. And Sarah's role in this? Sarah's expression showed a mixture of hope and determination. I'll be the first official representative of expanded humanity and galactic civilization, a bridge between what we've been and what we're becoming. Director Valthesh felt the weight of history settling around her. The decision she made in the next few moments would shape the development of galactic civilization for centuries to come. Director, Elena said quietly, I know this is overwhelming. You're being asked to help reshape everything you thought you knew about galactic politics. Take time to consider the implications. No, Director Valthesh replied, her neural patterns blazing with newfound determination. I've spent 8 centuries seeking wisdom, trying to build bridges between species and foster understanding. This is what I've been working toward without knowing it. She turned to face the 3 humans directly. I'll help you approach the other species leaders. I'll support the expansion of the Academy, and I'll do whatever I can to ensure this transition happens peacefully. Sarah stepped forward and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Then, welcome, Director, to the real galactic community. As they shook hands, Director Valthesh felt the future shifting around them. The careful balance of galactic politics that had existed for centuries was about to change forever. But for the first time in her long life, she felt truly hopeful about what that change might bring. 3 days later, Director Valthesh stood before the assembled faculty and senior students of Nexus Prime Academy. Sarah Chen sat in the front row, no longer hiding her true nature but not yet ready to reveal everything. My fellow educators, the director began. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in our Academy's mission. We are being offered the opportunity to expand our curriculum, to provide our students with access to knowledge and perspectives that have previously been unavailable. She paused, looking out at the curious faces representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. This expansion will require us to reconsider some of our assumptions about technological development, about the pace of advancement, and about the relationships between different civilizations. But I believe it represents the greatest opportunity for educational advancement in galactic history. Professor Kethral, the massive Gornathi who had first noticed Sarah's unusual capabilities, raised a rocky appendage. Director, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that we accept partnership with an organization that has been observing and protecting galactic development for thousands of years, an organization with access to technologies and knowledge that could accelerate our students' development by centuries. A murmur ran through the assembly. The Valkyrie delegation huddled together in crystalline conversation. The Zephyrian representatives flashed rapid color changes, indicating intense thought. And this organization is? Pressed Dr. Mylithera, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through questioning blues and yellows. Sarah stood up, and the room fell silent. They are my people, Professor. The humans you thought you knew are real, but they represent only a small portion of humanity's true development. She gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the hall, showing images of New Geneva and other human settlements that defied conventional understanding of what was possible. For 12,000 years, we've been part of this galaxy's development, protecting emerging civilizations and fostering growth. Now we'd like to work with you openly, to help prepare the next generation of galactic citizens for challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The reaction was immediate and intense. Voices raised in dozens of languages. Communication devices chimed with urgent messages, and several species representatives moved into defensive postures. Director Valthesh raised her hands for silence. I know this is shocking. I know it challenges everything we thought we understood, but I've seen their capabilities, their intentions, and their vision for galactic development. This is not a threat, it's an opportunity for advancement beyond anything we've imagined. Slowly, the chaos subsided, as curiosity began to overcome initial shock. Professor Kethral spoke for many when he said, Miss Chen, if what you're saying is true, then humanity has technologies that could revolutionize our understanding of physics, biology, and countless other fields. Yes, Sarah replied simply. A Zephyrian student near the back raised her hand. But why reveal this now? Why not continue as you have been? Sarah's expression grew serious. Because the galaxy is approaching a crossroads. The technologies being developed by various species are reaching a threshold where they could either lead to unprecedented advancement or catastrophic conflict. We can't guide that development from the shadows anymore. It requires open cooperation. Over the following hours, The questions came in waves. Technical inquiries about human capabilities, political concerns about the balance of power, philosophical discussions about the ethics of hidden guardianship. Sarah answered them all with patience and honesty, gradually painting a picture of a species that had spent millennia learning to balance power with responsibility. As the session concluded, Director Valthesh looked out at her faculty and students. She could see the mixture of excitement, apprehension, and curiosity that marked any significant transition. "We have much to discuss and much to decide," she announced. "But I believe we're witnessing the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization, an era where we move beyond the limitations of individual species and begin to explore what we can accomplish together." Sarah remained after the assembly, watching as groups of students and faculty continued their discussions in smaller clusters throughout the hall. Vex, he approached her, scales displaying the complex patterns that indicated deep thought and strong emotion. "Sarah," she said quietly, "I've been your roommate for less than a week, but I feel like I've known you much longer. Is that part of your abilities?" Sarah smiled warmly. "No, Vexy. That's just friendship. The kind of connection that happens between people regardless of species or technological differences. And that's what you hope to achieve on a galactic scale? That's what we've been working toward for 12,000 years, Sarah confirmed. The recognition that despite our differences, biological, technological, cultural, we're all part of the same universe. All seeking understanding and growth and connection. Vexhi's scales shifted to warm gold, the color of acceptance and hope. Then I think, Sarah Chen, that the galaxy is very lucky to have humans like you. As the academy settled into its night cycle, Sarah stood at the observation deck looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those points of light was Earth, where her genetic cousins were taking their first steps into galactic civilization. In other directions lay the hidden settlements where her people continued their ancient work of protection and guidance. But here, at Nexus Prime Academy, a new chapter was beginning. The careful separation between hidden guardians and developing civilizations was ending, replaced by open partnership and shared responsibility for the galaxy's future. She thought about the students she had met, the faculty members who had challenged and welcomed her, the director who had chosen trust over fear. They represented the best of what each species could offer: curiosity, wisdom, courage, and the willingness to grow beyond current limitations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as news of humanity's revelation spread throughout galactic civilization. There would be political negotiations, technological exchanges, and the complex work of building trust between species with vastly different capabilities and perspectives. But tonight, Sarah Chen, representative of expanded humanity, guardian of galactic development, and student seeking knowledge, allowed herself to feel optimistic about what the future might hold. The galaxy was about to discover that its human neighbors were much more interesting than anyone had imagined, and for the first time in 12,000 years, humanity was ready to show the galaxy what was truly possible. When civilizations chose cooperation over conflict, wisdom over power, and shared growth over individual advancement, the age of hidden guardianship was ending. The age of open partnership was about to begin.